The Oklahoma Sooners finally get a win.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, Jay, the transfer portal has been taking, but over the weekend, got a couple wins actually under our belt. The first one, you might not get too excited about a punter, but listen, when you're a defensive football team, you got to get a little bit of excited about a punter. The Sooners added Jacob Ulrich, the Kennesaw State punter, who actually led the nation in punting yards and was second in the nation in punts. So got a lot of work for Kennesaw State last year as one of the worst offenses in the FBS.
Yeah, Elzinger was one of our MVPs for this team all last season. So Elzinger, thank you so much for that beautiful boot that you were showing off and kicking them deep, getting some good field positioning and helping the defense out with that. So we had to replace that production. And of course, we had to go for the guy that actually used his leg on a regular basis. So we actually know it works. You don't want to get someone in and have no clue if they really can kick it deep or make it happen. But yeah, it's crazy that we're leading off with that because that's literally our first actual commitment out of the portal.
Well, listen, and I get it. Everybody's saying you're talking about a punter, but listen, this is for the brand. Shout out Pat McAfee. But the guy was tied for third in the nation in punts down to inside the 20. That kind of stuff matters. When you have a defensive football team, it matters. Now let's get to the big news. That's Deion Burks is returning to Oklahoma for one more year after what was an injury-laden season. Had the soft tissue injury against Tennessee, didn't come back, then did come back and got the concussion. Was that against Missouri? Is that right?
Yes, the Missouri game was the concussion. He came back, got hit across the middle, and yeah, it did not look pretty.
No. So I think a lot of people expected him. I honestly expected if he was going to go, it was going to be to the NFL. I wasn't sure. I felt like he could use another year at the collegiate level. And now this is a big win for Oklahoma to get him to come back. And I think it has a chance to be very dynamic for him next year.
Yeah, it was pretty huge that he did make the return. And I think the thing that jumped out the most to me on that is that he said the whole video montage they put together, which was pretty cool. Going into BV's, if you haven't seen it, it's on Deion Burks' X account. He went in, talked to BV, turned in his number 6 jersey and everything. And BV wished him well, apologized for the season coming the way it did. And Burks stopped him like, nah, hold a second. I got something else though. Unzipped his jacket. Boom. He's like, I'm going to wear number 4 instead, which now that number's available, he's able to go back to the number that he's used to wearing. And that to me is pretty big in itself. I think that adds an additional level of confidence. When a guy can rock the number that they really want, you look good and makes you feel good. When you feel good, you play good. You play good, you win. Things like that. So hopefully that does help with the injury situation we've dealt with this year. Hopefully that eliminates some of the snake bittenness and the voodoo that was placed on us. But no, it's huge that Deion Burks decided to commit and come back. Because to me, if Burks is deciding to come back, that may mean that there's some things coming down the pike. I mean, obviously he has an idea what the game plan is being there internally. They've got to sell a guy like him who could have gone to the league on what the possibilities are if he decides to stay. And so for me, it's kind of a telltale story of you're able to get him back. That means that, yeah, there's a possibility that something else is coming down the line.
I think some of it is he's going to have a comfort level with Ben Arbuckle and with Emmett Jones and what they are bringing to the table, because I think he was in line for a big year this year. I mean, obviously he was leading the Sooners in receiving for the first few weeks until he got injured against Tennessee, and he still finished second on the team in receptions after only playing 5 games. One, that shows you just how inept the passing offense was for Oklahoma this year, but also how dynamic he was for the Sooners in those first 3 games of the season until getting injured against Tennessee. Now he's going to have to get healthy. Am I going to sit here and say, okay, now the passing offense is fine. It's going to be just fine. No issues, no concerns. No, I'm still in got to see it to believe it mode. But this does help. You have a dynamic weapon that you can get the ball to in space, whether it's in the short game or you try to get it downfield. You've got a weapon in Deion Burks. You've got to add to that because you still need more production, more experience around him and around whoever the quarterback is going to be. You've got to find more experience in the portal. We're going to discuss what some of the latest things are in the transfer portal market for wide receiver, what the chatter is a little bit later in the show. But getting Deion Burks means, okay, we got one guy that can start for us. Yeah. If you really like what you see in Jacob Jordan, you've got another guy that potentially could start for you. And then who knows where you go from there, but you feel much better about your wide receiver room right now than you did maybe a week ago.
Yeah, especially because the wide receiver room is so young. You're still waiting to see how healthy Jaden Gibson is coming off of that knee injury. Supposedly he's doing a lot of work, probably at about 60 to 70% availability. And so the expectation is, with Brent Venables, he said it at the presser this week after practice on Friday that he expects J. Gibb to come back next season and, be out there. And then now Emmett Jones has to hope that he can bring in guys that will be healthy for the spring, because in winter and spring, you're gonna want to train with healthy dudes. You don't want to go out there and train with dudes that, aren't healthy. You don't have a whole bunch of dudes sitting on the sideline. And so a lot of the guys that did leave are ones that would have most likely had to sit some portion of the spring before they could truly practice. And now you're able to refill that with guys that can. And yeah, as mentioned, we'll talk chatter and stuff because there's a lot of wide receivers in the portal and a lot of guys that we're going after. And I know that fans would like us to go after the best wide receivers in the portal, right? I don't know if the best ones have entered the portal yet, though, because we still have a lot of playoff teams that haven't had their influx of players leaving yet. And that's not going to finish up until roughly around January 20th. I think that that's going to be the date to keep your eyes on, is that once the national championship is actually played, then you're going to see a lot more dudes come out. Because as soon as they play their game, if the portal is closed, which the portal will be closed on the 29th, so it's 20 days. As soon as their games are over, there's a 7-day additional window. I think it's 5 to 7 day additional window for transfers to jump in. So as soon as these playoff games are done, John, there's a good chance that you may see somebody leave from Georgia. Somebody may leave from Clemson. Somebody may leave from Texas. Somebody may leave from SMU, Oregon, Boise State, Arizona State. You got to name everybody.
That's right.
Y'all don't want them G5 guys. Y'all keep saying. But but fans say G5 guys, they don't deserve to be here. That's basically what they've been saying on social medias. But we don't subscribe to that. But the point is, you will see more players jump in at that point, and then you can kind of assess: are these the best players in the portal, or is this guy better? Then you'll be able to determine if you're getting the best ones or not. But unless you decide to wait, leave a spot or two open later on, you won't know. And so we just got to hope that we are snatching up the best ones at the time.
Well, I think some of it comes down to what's the quarterback situation going to look like? Because in order to sell some of these wide receivers, they're going to have to know. They're going to have to know what's the plan at quarterback in 2025 and even maybe in 2026 if you're getting guys with multiple years of eligibility. Could one of those dominoes that needs to fall have fallen for us to have a little bit more clarity on Oklahoma's quarterback situation? Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on NFL all in one place. Like right now, Cincinnati Bengals are sitting as a 7-point favorite against the Cleveland Browns. If you are big on, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're going to be a 3.5-point favorite playing Dallas on the 22nd as well. So there's a lot of options coming out there for you to play, and FanDuel's got you taken care of. So if you want to check out live stats, view live play-by-play, all of that can be done on the same screen where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll start off with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as the Oklahoma Sooners pursue transfer portal additions on the offensive side of the ball, one of the big questions is, what are they going to do at quarterback? Jackson Arnold, gone. Brennan Zerbrugg, gone. Michael Hawkins slated to start in the Armed Forces Bowl. But I think everybody expects, even Michael Hawkins expects, that Oklahoma is going to have to add a portal quarterback to the quarterback competition this spring. The big name has been John Mateer. That's the one that everybody's going to be itching to get in their program. Well, the Oklahoma Sooners have been the one connected mostly because of Ben Arbuckle, the offensive coordinator that helped him have so much success in 2024. Well, another name that Oklahoma has added might add to their ability to woo Mr. John Mateer, and that's John Kucievsky, the offensive quality control coach, analyst, and also quarterbacks coach for Washington State. Jay, do you think that this could have that kind of an impact for Mateer in the quarterback market?
It sounds like it. I did was scrolling through some of the Cougars, their boards to kind of get an understanding about Kucievsky, and it sounded like the expectation was he was going to be the play caller in the bowl game. So he knows Arbuckle's system. He helps implement a lot of it. And so it sounds like he is integral in what Coach Arbuckle does in that offense. He followed him from Western Kentucky here. And so it sounds like they've got a connection. And well, Coach Kucievsky looks like he's now at Oklahoma as a senior offensive analyst and assistant quarterback coach. So you got your two quarterback coaches right there, and Coach Ben Arbuckle as well as John Kucievsky. Makes me believe that there is a heavy lean for someone to join them at Oklahoma. Now, I'm wondering if Mateer decides to go ahead and play in the bowl game and wait to hit the portal after that game. I don't know how that would work, overall, because as the portal gets closer and closer to closing, a lot of people is going to wonder, okay, so who's going to be the quarterback? Is Mateer going to come or not? Some of these wide receivers might say, hey, I like Michael Hawkins, but he's young. I'm not sure what he's going to look like in Arbuckle's system, blah, blah, blah. You'll have all of these things coming up. Well, with these two dominoes falling, John, it really does feel like Kucievsky may tip things over, and we may actually hear something about Mateer in the next few days.
Listen, if Oklahoma is able to land a veteran quarterback, I think that bodes well for them. We like Michael Hawkins' talent. There's a lot to work with. There's a lot to like about where he's at mentally with the game. At the same time, Brent Venables really doesn't have a lot of time to wait on developing a quarterback. And we saw what some of the inexperience at quarterback could lead to in 2024 when nothing else is necessarily going right around you. That's not to say everything's going to go right around whoever the quarterback is in 2025, but you want to get somebody with a little bit more experience maybe at the helm in case things aren't right, in case you do have an offensive line that hasn't improved, in case you do have a rash of injuries at wide receiver again, that you've got somebody that's been in some of these tough battles, these tough contests, and has risen to the occasion. So Listen, if John Mateer comes to Oklahoma, I think that's probably going to be your guy. But if not, you're probably going to need to look for a veteran option to compete with Michael Hawkins in the spring to see, okay, who rises to the occasion and who takes a job. I think based on just not hearing anything about Oklahoma pursuing a quarterback anywhere else, right? We've heard them pursuing wide receivers, defensive line, offensive line, those positions in particular. We haven't heard about them pursuing a quarterback. And I think to me, that's telling. Now, they might be playing games in the shadows a little bit, trying to keep, the scent off a little bit. And that's okay. I don't mind doing business in quiet. I don't need to hear every detail, because actually doing business in the public is not going to bode well for negotiations. But the fact that we haven't heard of them hosting a quarterback or even offering a quarterback or pursuing a quarterback leads me to believe, again, just reading all the tea leaves, connecting all the strings on the cork board, doing the thing from Usual Suspects where you're seeing all the different signs, that it's going to be John Mateer. And again, I have no sources, no inside information, nothing that's telling me that it's going to be John Mateer. So don't mistake what I'm saying here. But the fact that they haven't been connected to a quarterback except John Mateer since the portal opened, since Jackson Arnold departed for the portal, tells me as much as I need to know.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And so I'm honestly, I one option if Mateer doesn't come up, and even though I've seen that he's visiting a lot of schools, will probably be Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback from Cal. It would be fun to have him terrorize Auburn one more time, especially since they picked up Jackson Arnold. It would just be kind of hilarious to have him do that again. But I'd say he's probably one of your options if the Mateer sweepstakes doesn't happen, because we all know Miami's going to be all over it. Mm-hmm. Honestly, kind of surprised that Miami's not all over Mendoza since he's from Miami, Florida. You would think they would go snatch him up and bring him home, but we all know that
like those Washington State quarterbacks, man.
The little quarterbacks coached by Ben Arbuckle, it seems like, man. You go ahead, you get one, you may as well go for the second one. I totally understand it, but I totally believe that Fernando Mendoza is one that you should definitely keep your eyes open for. There's not many other quarterbacks really on the list. I mean, you still got Malik Murphy who's out there. You got Luke Kromenhoek, the 5-star from Florida State. There's not a whole bunch of dudes that really are, I guess you could say, true options that Oklahoma could really go after. But it does feel like, just like you said, John, that all of the chips are in on just hoping and praying that John Mateer hits the portal, a la what Caleb Williams did when he decided to portal after playing in the bowl game. The thing that kind of sucks is we play our bowl games on the exact same day. So that Friday, both teams play the bowl game. First, you got Oklahoma in the early window at 11 o'clock, and then you've got the nightcap at 8 p.m. You got Washington State playing. So does Mateer play? Not sure. Hopefully we hear something this week. That would be great, because that would probably ease a lot of the tension in Sooner Nation. And then at that point, honestly, recruiting may happen. But, John, you made a very good point. We're probably still moving around quietly doing things. And there may even be a point where Mateer's telling people one way or the other. And that could be something that's impacting some of the transfer portal targets that we have, because they know something that we don't.
Yeah, I got to imagine that some of the things that we're seeing, they've let some people know, but maybe not everybody. Mm-hmm. Or they've at least let them know they've got a direction. They've got a plan. To bring in a veteran quarterback, or they're in pursuit of one. Right. It's a little bit complicated because the quarterback that Oklahoma is most connected to isn't in the portal. He's on a team preparing to play a bowl game and is still being heavily pursued by his own school. There was a report from John Kucievsky that does a lot of work out on the West Coast, basically saying that Washington State's brass kind of went all in with an NIL package to try and entice Mateer to stay. Ooh. We'll see where that all ends up, but they're going hard. And based on Canzano's report, they didn't do this for Cam Ward a year ago. They didn't have a sit down with Cam Ward and put all the chips in the middle of the table and go all in to keep him. But they're doing it for Mateer because he's, according to Canzano's words, or the source that he spoke to, because it's not just about the player, it's about the person. And so that's going to be an interesting aspect of all of this. Does John Mateer feel some sort of loyalty to Washington State? It's hard to recruit him. It's hard to, turn down the place that you've given something to. Now, a lot of guys do it in the modern era of college football. The money talks, the opportunity talks. Yeah. But there are still a few dudes out there where loyalty matters. And there are a few dudes out there that being first to offer or first to recruit, or the person that recruited you the most or the most heaviest, that kind of stuff still matters in some instances. So let's not completely rule it out and say it's only going to be an NIL thing. Now, obviously, he's got that strong connection with Ben Arbuckle, that strong relationship with Kucievsky. That's going to matter too. And that's what's giving Oklahoma an opportunity in this. Because if Arbuckle's not here, I don't know if they get this opportunity. But hopefully we'll find out something soon, because once you get the quarterback domino to fall, then everything else will start to fall in place as well. But we're going to discuss what's happening in the transfer portal coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Thanks for helping us get to 10,000 subscribers here on Locked On Sooners. Now we're on to 20K. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Jay, there's been a lot happening in the transfer portal. A couple of Oklahoma wide receiver targets that they were connected to, and one that they were kind of connected to didn't go Oklahoma's way. That's Donovan McCulley, the Indiana transfer wide receiver who committed to Michigan, and Reggie Virgil, who, again, connected to Jaden Gibson, childhood friend, was thought to be a heavy Oklahoma possibility, ends up going to Texas Tech, and then Chase Sowell, who is cousins with Torrey Blaylock, the four-star running back signee from the 2025 class, ends up going to Iowa State. Now, so that's kind of where Oklahoma's at right now in the wide receiver market. They're still pursuing guys at wide receiver. Jerron Bradley from formerly of Texas Tech, then Boston College, again connected to Emmett Jones. So that's where they're at. Any of this surprising to you, Jay?
No, not really. I'll say this. Until they actually step on campus and go to a class, they are not truly committed. I'll give you an example. Dylan Gabriel. He committed to UCLA. He is committed to them all through December. His January classes rolled around. Jeff Lebby, we found out the final answer from Caleb Williams. He picked up the phone and called and said, hey, I'd love for you to be the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel was probably like, I would love to be the starting quarterback at the University of Oklahoma. We go ahead and unenroll and head on to Norman. And boom, the rest was history. So until they actually show up to class, it don't matter. So I say that to say this. As we go through the portal conversations and recruitment, if there's someone that we really want and someone decides to snatch them up and we come back and reapproach them after, right before the portal window truly closes, and we say, hey, interested? It's a good chance they may go ahead and say, I'm going to re-enter the portal and end up in Oklahoma. That's the game. The game's the game. Unfortunately, everybody plays it that way, and I could see us doing it. We did it before. We did it all when BV first got here, so I could see us doing that again. So I'd keep my eyes open on that portion of it, and I wouldn't really be too stressed because until, like I said, they actually end up in class, they're not. And I know Brent Venables and them with Emmett Jones, they have a strategy. They're looking at certain players. And you mentioned Duran. He was one that was a fascinating one, John. We were looking at him when he hit the portal from Tech because Emmett Jones coached him there. And as soon as he got here, but you ran into a problem. You already had like 4 dudes that you thought were ready to play. Mm-hmm. So you bring in this 6'5", 220-pounder, he's going to be behind probably Jade Gibson. He's going to be behind Andrew Anthony, Jalil Farouk, Nick Anderson, and Deion Burks. That's 5 dudes that he's going to have to fight with to get that position with, plus all of the young players you brought in. You still had Jaquez Petaway and all the young guys you brought in your recent class. That's an extremely full room. And so the chance of playing was going to be slim unless he actually came. If we had actually came, he'd been the star wide receiver at that point because we had nobody else playing. But it made sense for him to go to Boston College and look for an opportunity to play. That didn't work out for him. And now Emmett Jones has rekindled that flame. It's like, hey, I actually don't have wide receivers now, and there's a spot open. Would you like to come down here, check us out, and let's have a conversation? I sense that that's one. If there's one I think will land, I think he is one.
Yeah, they're also pursuing Neziah Hunter, the Cal wide receiver prospect who was a redshirt freshman, had a really nice season for them with over 600 yards, 40 receptions, 5 or 6 touchdowns. So there are options out there. If anything, there are going to be an abundance of wide receivers in the portal market. You're seeing it at the NFL level too, where teams are able to find really good wide receivers 3rd, 4th round now, because it's the deepest position pretty much every single draft class. If you follow the NFL draft stuff every year, like I used to when I covered the Dallas Cowboys, that was the buzz every single year from 2016 through 2020 and the 2021 NFL draft. That was my last NFL draft coverage year. It was wide receivers deep. That's what you always heard. And that's the case in college football too. College football is deep with wide receivers. The one thing that I guess I am slightly encouraged by is if you get a commitment from a dude, you're probably going to get that guy, because there's not going to be a lot of jobs for him to be like, to bounce out middle of January and then decide to go somewhere else, because those roster spots are going to be full. Teams are going to have their 105 or maybe more, and then have to figure out a way to cut down even further. So they're not going to necessarily be in a position to add a bunch more talent. So that's kind of where Oklahoma's at in the wide receiver stuff. Jay, any surprise at Jackson Arnold going to Auburn?
Oh, not at all. It makes sense. I think the bigger shocker to me is the fact that Mississippi State losing Michael Van Buren to LSU and then not landing Jackson Arnold. I figured Lebby would have landed him because, I mean, that one made a lot of sense to people. But I had said before, I didn't think that Jackson Arnold had that much alliance just to Jeff Lebby. I know that he really wanted to be quarterback at Oklahoma, but I didn't think his alliance to Jeff Lebby was really that big. Looking at that now, him going to Auburn and Hugh Freeze, who does run an RPO type system where his quarterback does run a lot. Look at Peyton Thorne last season. There's an opportunity for Jackson Arnold to flourish. The question is going to be, will he throw the ball? And it's one thing I like to point out to a lot of people. I've had someone even mention, I think that Jackson Arnold has a chance of getting 3,000 yards passing in the season. And I smiled and I said, you know that Auburn has only had one 3,000-yard passer since 2000. And that was in 2017 by Jarrett Stidham. They don't throw for 3,000 yards at Auburn. Cam Newton, who even ran for like almost 1,500 yards rushing, he didn't throw for 3,000 yards. It just doesn't happen there. For some reason, something about that place, they just don't do it. So to me, it's a keep your eyes open. Not sure, but it made sense for him to go there. What did you think about that move?
I was like you. I thought Jeff Lebby kind of mismanaged the situation by allowing Mississippi State to be so heavily connected early on in the portal situation, and then losing Michael Van Buren just a few days later. It's a bummer. I mean, that must hurt, because you had a promising young quarterback in Michael Van Buren that you could have continued to build around. And then the Jackson Arnold situation. Now, who knows exactly how that all went down, if Van Buren was actually going to go to the portal anyway. But I think actually it's a smart move for Arnold to not go to Mississippi State and to go to Auburn, because you're going to be in a better offense. You're going to have better talent around you. You're going to have a better defense on the other side of the ball than you would have had at Mississippi State. Will it be good next year? We'll see. Will he be able to avoid the turnovers next year? We'll see. Peyton Thorne was very turnover prone, and that's what killed them in games too for the Auburn Tigers. So you go from one quarterback that had struggles with turnovers to another quarterback that had struggles with turnovers. Hopefully Jackson Arnold's able to get some of that under wraps. Was there anything else from the weekend in the transfer portal that kind of sparked your interest, or that you heard about somebody that Oklahoma might be targeting?
Hunter hasn't shown that he's actually going to make the visit to Oklahoma yet. And honestly, the microscope right now is on wide receiver recruiting and portal shopping, I guess you could say. Because to me, shopping in the transfer portal is your retail prices. Your high school guys are your wholesale prices. So that you always get them a bit better. You're getting them more raw. And you're trying to see what they're going to be. Hunter and Isaiah Hunter not really pointing out that he's coming to visit Oklahoma had me a slightly concerned, but kind of like we talked about in the other segment, that John, right now, we don't know if the best wide receivers are in the portal yet. Mm-hmm. A lot of the wide receivers in the country are going through their negotiations and conversations. Schools are trying to figure out their budgets as they look to front load stuff as we prepare for revenue share. So we don't know who people actually want and who people are really going to go after. So we'll kind of see. Think Hunter, though, not saying, when he's going to visit Oklahoma was a little bit of a concern, but He's also a redshirt freshman. I think we probably want to go for some more veteran type players, specifically because we've got the young guys on the roster that we may actually want to get ramped up quickly so they can play here the next 3 years.
A lot still to come down the pipeline in the transfer portal market. Hopefully we get some news over the next few days at the quarterback position, because I do believe that once that domino falls, once we have an understanding what the quarterback's going to look like for 2025 and maybe even 2026, that'll, I think, give everybody a little bit more peace of mind as Oklahoma moves through portal season. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Follow Jay on Twitter at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube as well. Follow me at John9Williams. You can read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as well. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.